you may have some technical questions about, I'm planning to retire. What is that going to look like for me? Those are still conversations to have with your HR partner. But what we want to be in the EOC is a resource, just a general resource that if someone has a thought or a question about, well, what does that mean with regards to the ESOP, we can hopefully answer those questions.
Welcome to SSR On Air. I'm Mike Rogers, your host for this monthly podcast brought to you by Smith Seckman Reed. Tune in as I interview leaders, colleagues, and clients about what is going on internally at SSR and in the larger engineering community. Welcome to the podcast, SSR On Air. Appreciate everybody coming in today. Today we got Tim Priddy, Andy Brophy, and then we got Karen Espensen on a Zoom call or a Teams call with us here to talk a little bit about the ESOP and ESOP committee, council?
Employee Ownership Council.
Okay.
The EOC.
The EOC. Okay. Very good. Very good. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But first, I think, Tim, you've been on the podcast before, and Andy, you've been on the podcast before. And Karen, I'm going to put you on the spot since you haven't been on it yet. So just quick introductions. Just kind of say, who you are, what you do, and maybe a little bit about how you got here to SSR.
Karen Espensen. I'm a project manager, mechanical engineer in the Dallas office. Started my career as a design engineer with the firm actually probably less than a mile away from where I am right now, and did a lot of the different things since then. I've been on the sales side. I've worked as a financial analyst, believe it or not, and I've even owned my own clothing store. And then I ended up back in design, thankfully, after COVID hit, and quickly found my way to SSR after being at a firm that wasn't quite working out to what I thought it would be. So fast forward, it's been a year and a half, I think, since I've joined SSR. And I hate to sound corny, but I will say it's the best company I've ever worked for.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I've said it many times, so I agree. Well, glad to have you. Andy, just real quick, just recap what you do here and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I sit over in the MEP side here in Nashville. I'm a building performance engineer. Basically work on energy models a lot of my time here, manage projects, and generally interface between architect teams and our mechanical teams, both for SSR projects and external clients as well, in a nutshell.
And Tim?
I'm the CFO, been here 23 years, and been part of the ESOP, I guess, since the beginning. It was part of the team that put it into place 100% back in 2016.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so the ESOP, just I guess back up in my mind a little bit. SSR's always had an ESOP, right? I mean, from
the mid-'80s.
From the mid-'80s on, but it was a minority kind of share ESOP. And then about 7 years ago?
Yep, 2016. We started the exploration process in 2015, and took us a year to kind of get to the point to do the transaction.
Right. So 100% ESOP now, employee owned. And I get asked that question all the time. Are you really 100% ESOP? Because you see ESOP firm out there, and what does that mean? So anyway, so we're here to talk about that a little bit, but I also talk about the employee
Ownership Council. The
Council.
EOC. Yeah,
EOC.
There's
okay.
kind of the interplay between what the purpose of the council is versus the ESOP more on the legal side of things. I think we're a little bit separate from that, but in the same manner.
Yeah.
We're more so a group that is meant to be a resource to the rest of the company, colleagues, our peers, on just what it means to be an ESOP and how that benefits us personally versus the technical and legal sides of the ESOP as far as the ownership structure goes. So that's, I think, the basic way that I would separate the two.
All right. So the genesis of it.
Well, let me back up just a little bit. So when we went to 100% ESOP, we've kind of always had an ESOP committee, but one of the formal committees from the board was to have an ESOP committee that they delegated the administrative task of the ESOP, kind of the legal, the management of the ESOP. And so we've had that in place literally since 2016. My team, myself, are pretty involved in that, but it wasn't any form or fashion of promotion of the ESOP. And so what we felt like we were missing in the ESOP experience was to promote this idea that we all need to act like owners, and we need to understand we're an ESOP company. And there's a little differentiation too, Mike. You mentioned we're a 100% owned, employee-owned company. A lot of engineering firms are 100% employee-owned.
Right.
It's just owned by 15 people or 20 people or
Right.
whatever. It's not 100% owned by employees. And so in terms of all employees. And so that makes SSR a little unique in that fashion. And we just want to communicate that and promote that and be a resource to people if they're curious about what's that mean that I'm an owner of a company now. And so that was kind of a gap that we felt like we had. We asked Karen and Andy to kind of head that piece of it up. We specifically did not want leadership to be part of that promotion. We wanted to kind of be kind of a grassroots kind of idea. So
Okay, so that's the genesis of
Yep.
where the idea came from.
that's right.
And so, how did Andy? How did you get involved? Karen, how did you get involved? How did you guys get here?
Tim asked me. He called me one day, sort of out of the blue. Hey Tim, what's happening?
Yeah, what's going on?
And just kept laid out his thought process behind what this group could be. We didn't have, there was no name for it at the time, and we had to come up with something to name it. But just I've always been a pretty big advocate of just the ESOP itself, and anytime I met a new employee or someone, I did during the onboarding process, did anyone talk to you about the ESOP? No, it was, and then it just naturally would occur to me to share about it because I think it's really unique. I mean, there's
Yep.
ESOPs out there, but as far as just like you said, it's 100% all employees are part of it, vested from day one.
Yeah.
It's a big part of what you get with the culture here at SSR, so it naturally would just come out of me. So it was I guess, a natural fit there.
Yeah, I got you. Karen, how about you?
So I think when Andy started initially, he had a co-chair that, unfortunately or fortunately for me, left the company, and I was asked to fill in the gap. So I became a co-chair with Andy. Can't even remember when that was, earlier this year at least, and a lot has happened since. So it's an exciting time to be here, especially with ESOPtober just around the corner.
ESOPtober. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. You coined that phrase.
I think October is officially ownership month or employee ownership month, and we've sort of dubbed that ESOPtober.
Yeah.
As just the month to celebrate what we are as a company.
Mm-hmm. So what is? I mean, is there a charter for the group? Is there? What does it look like, and what are we trying to do?
Yeah, we have a formal charter,
Okay.
which charter is basically just a document that sort of governs our activities as a council.
Mhm.
So there's some intentionality behind it. We have a goal, we have an objective, we have parameters set out for term limits and how long someone should be on it, how we go about getting new members in the future. This is meant to be something that's going to be around. This isn't just a pilot program that may be thrown to the wayside. This is
Right.
something that we want to build and develop over time, eventually, hopefully touching all colleagues.
So how many people are involved in it now?
Well, we've got 18, including Karen and myself. We originally slated that to be 7 or 8 people, and we had invited some folks to apply, so to speak, and basically talk about what ownership means to you. And the responses that we got, we were a little bit blown away by. And there's a lot more people out there like Karen, like myself, that love the idea of the ESOP and really had a lot to say about what ownership meant to them. And when we went through all the applications, it was sort of tough to turn anyone away for the first go about with all of the enthusiasm that we had. We thought it would be a great way to kick things off.
Yeah.
So,
Kind of the behind the scenes of that, Susan and I saw all the applicants who turned in their responses, and Karen and Andy had selected, as we had asked them to do, 6 or 8 people to join the committee. And Susan and I were reading through all the responses, and it was like, how do we turn any of these away? And so we reached out to both Karen and Andy and said, what do you think about running a council with 18 people? And they're like, yeah, we'll do it. And so it was really, we were blown away by the response of the people. And I think, as Andy said, we did not realize the excitement, I think, that actually is within halls, if you will, of SSR about the ESOP. And so we didn't turn anybody away. Kind of going back to the name a little bit, I think Andy and Karen were very intentional about selecting the term council versus committee, because oftentimes when you set up a committee, that almost is by definition an interim organization, a group that's, we'll start a committee, and once it's done, the committee is over with. And the idea of a council is, I think, a permanency, if you will, in terms of that organization, that group. And we've already asked Karen and Andy, not that we're looking anytime soon, to be thinking about who's the future leadership of this council. And as they're bringing on new people and growing the people who are part of the group, we want it to be a very long-term, a permanent part of our DNA, so to speak.
Yeah. So what have you two been doing now since it kind of got kicked off? What have you been up to?
Well, after we had, our 16 council members finally, first thing we did was we had a retreat in Nashville. So we called it our inaugural retreat. So we hope to do that every year. And we formed an education subcommittee and an event subcommittee, and kind of we have Braden Maffett, who's leading our education subcommittee, and John Scott leading our event subcommittee. So, there was just a lot of collaboration, and we really ironed out the major things that we wanted to achieve for the year and accomplish. I would say that by the time people are listening to the podcast, you're starting to see some of that activity and some of that work, And so really nice to see so many people from so many different offices come together and work on, this initiative. And it's a fun initiative to be a part of, for sure.
Yeah, we had discussions about what kind of subcommittees could we have to sort of break up some of the key work that's being done. So ended up narrowing it down with Tim and Susan's help about just trying to stay focused on what are sort of the two key aspects. Education being more on the side of the basics about an ESOP. We have statements. Everyone has a statement that they can look at and view what their ownership looks like from a financial perspective, and what it means to be, a private company versus a public company, and what the differences are there. About the stock market and your 401k plan versus what the ESOP is. So there's some basics that the education committee is basically tasked with trying to organize ways to teach people about those different aspects of being an ESOP. And then on the flip side, the events subcommittee, which is a part of the group, they're more focused on what are sort of the key milestones that we have as an ESOP company throughout the year. Mainly what you'll start to see as we roll this out with ESOPtober being Ownership Month, a celebration of being owners, if you will, leading into other events that we've pegged or milestones like Founders Day, the day that SSR became a company. When our founders set out to make this company where it was employee owned, that was really the vision from the get-go, and the process behind that and some of the history behind that. And then share price reveal, what happens with our share price every year, just togetherness, project spotlights. We've got a lot of ideas flowing out there that we're just trying to get organized. So a lot of the work to this point has been the charter, getting the team together, and then focusing on what is it. There's so much that we could do. What do we want to start with to really get the ball rolling with this council?
And as you guys have looked at this, and I know we've talked about it on other podcasts a little bit. How's the ESOP viewed outside of SSR? I mean, when we're talking about recruiting and things like that, are we leveraging some things towards that as well?
I'm glad you bring that up, because a big part of the education component of this is to look at how do we recruit some of that top tier talent that would, how do we grow as a business? Well, we need people, we need personnel, we sell our knowledge. And so we can only sell so much knowledge, and each one of us can only do so much work before you're filled to the brim with work, right? And so if we want to keep growing as a company, which will only keep growing our share price, we need to be able to acquire people. And part of that is if we can understand the benefits while we're already owners, well, how great would that be if someone who wants those same benefits would want to come here for that reason? So I think, that's definitely part of it as well, that external focus too.
Yeah, having those conversations just ad hoc, I guess, when they come up, when you're sitting there with a peer from another company or whatever it might be. because I get asked that question a lot when I'm out too. Just our structure. What does it mean to be an ESOP? And I've seen companies that have changed over time to follow suit, and do that. So I think there's a benefit to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's downstream from this? Where are we going? What does this look like in a year, and what do you guys see happening and getting accomplished?
Well, I know as we're talking to you today, we're going to have some things come out during ESOPtober, but the hope is by the time this time next year, a lot more people within the company know who's part of the council, knows who's involved in it, and it's felt just through kind of you mentioned the word grassroots. That's my favorite phrase to use. This is really talking with anyone and everyone throughout the company that we can, and touching them in some way, whether it be a personal conversation or through one of the videos we might put out or any other type of email communication. Hopefully it's more well known what we're doing and what we're trying to bring to the company as a whole, and touting ownership. Yeah. Karen, do you have anything to?
Yeah, I can add on. I think, the ultimate goal is to truly inspire the ownership mindset, to cultivate an ownership culture where everybody feels like an owner, your voice matters, your ideas matter. And if there's something you want to do, if there's a positive change that you want to implement, there's people around to support you. It's hard to just say like act like an owner. So you kind of have to start somewhere, which is why we started with education, celebration, but that's kind of the difficult piece is how do you truly insinuate that ownership mindset? I like to think that if you were starting an engineering firm on your own, okay, you have all the people, you have the desks, you've got all the programs you need. Well, the first thing you need is client. So we have to get clients. We have to do a good job for our clients and keep our clients. And then we want the smartest people and we want to retain our people. So now we have to educate our own people. So we have things like mechanical knowledge form. I'm sure other disciplines have similar things. The EPIC committee to keep us up to date with, what's going on in the industry. The mentorship program, so I think our company is making the right decisions and to be, like I said, is the best company I've ever worked for. And I really mean that. So it's just, inspiring that ownership mindset to everybody in the company.
And I think a lot of that actually happens by education and learning more about it. I mean, you can say, act like a tennis player. Well, until you understand how to play tennis, you're just a actor on TV, as you've seen some commercials where we really want to, back to that grassroots word, when people understand what it means and what their actions mean to the success of this company, which means the success of their ownership in this company, and they see their statements, blossoming or blooming, I think that's when people start, it becomes contagious almost. And people, and I think that's where the recruiting comes in and say, hey, come to work for us and, look what can happen in a special way. Let me jump back. Karen mentioned what they've been doing a little bit as they started it. One thing she left out is the education. I mean, these 18 people, we've gone through at least 4 hours of pretty detailed explanation of the ESOP. So they're not just coming at it without any preparation for it. And, they've spent a lot of time learning about it. And they're very serious. Both Karen and Andy have spent many more hours in terms of leading it and organizing it. So it's been a big ask for both of them. And I think also the other 16 people that are involved in it. I mean, they've sat through at least 4 hours of education that I put on with them. And it was an exciting information. But it was kind of that basics that you had to kind of start with. So as they become that resource for people, I think they'll be a valuable and a good resource. And they are building that knowledge base of what an ESOP is and what it means to be an ESOP company.
Yeah.
So a lot of work there.
Yeah, it's really it's that communication aspect. It's that baseline knowledge. What we're not doing, you have an HR partner already, and you may have some technical questions about, I'm planning to retire. What is that going to look like for me? Those are still conversations to have with your HR partner. But what we want to be in the EOC is a resource, just a general resource that if someone has a thought or a question about, well, what does that mean with regards to the ESOP, we can hopefully answer those questions.
You touched, Andy, on how we recruit with it and how the message that goes out. When it comes to our clients, I think it's also a message to clients. It's a little bit of a recruitment too. I mean, they like to hear the fact that we're owners and we care about it in that way, in that we understand the connection between the client life, the things that Karen mentioned about, hey, the first thing you want to do is make sure you've got clients and you're taking care of your clients. And if everybody's feeling that way and makes that connection, I think clients see that and they understand that. So I think the message to them is very similar in that, hey, you're important to us, important to every individual that's talking to you downstream, however far downstream it goes, because they understand that's part of being an owner, is taking care of your clients. And so I think that's a big part of the message that goes out. And it's like when you're on a phone call with a client, you're an owner, act like an owner. And I say that all the time. I think that's a true statement. So everybody good?
All good.
Great message. Appreciate you guys doing that. I'm looking forward to seeing the stuff come out with it, and
Me too. Yeah.
be fun. Thanks for joining us for this episode of SSR On Air. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. You can also connect with us on social media. Links to everything can be found in the show's notes. Take care, everyone. See you next time.